Hey everyone, Gary here, and I'm sitting outside again doing a vlog. It's been a while since I've been able to do one of these because I don't get a lot of privacy these days. So let's get started, I guess. I was going to talk about Fluff Bunnies. I actually tried making this video earlier, it was just too hot, and I don't know, I'm very critical towards myself when I make videos. Yeah. Anyway, shit. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about Fluffy Bunnies, and the term's it's a bit problematic, I find, because it's very subjective depending on who's using it. I mean, when Wiccans use it, to describe usually Garnerians and the like, they usually use it to describe what they call neo-Wiccans or eclectic pagan witches. And it seems to be more about this whole love and light, positive thing. Whereas when other groups use it, for example, Reconstructionists and the like, usually they use it in a more to describe somebody who's ignorant, who doesn't really know much. I mean, an example would be, say, a Wiccan who thinks that their faith is somehow something ancient, when it really isn't. I mean, there's no evidence for such a thing. I mean, yes, amongst Anglo-Saxons, but amongst other cultures, not really. Usually it's somebody who will take a god from a different culture, not even, look up the information, like maybe go by what a paragraph says about it. Not look up the lore, not look up, the mythology of this being, not even look into the culture in which this deity comes from. And that's kind of more of what my definition was. I mean, maybe it was a bit of a new agey thing, but not really the whole love and light, but just more or less kind of just, I guess, someone who's just very ignorant, someone who thinks that, Wicca or traditional witchcraft is something ancient when it really isn't. It's relatively modern. I mean, yes, it is based on ancient religions. I'm not denying that. But I mean, it's not ancient. Am I saying it's illegitimate? No, certainly not. But it's not ancient, and I think it's a bit unfortunate that people still think it is when it really isn't. I've read a lot of books, and there's none of the academic books, and none of them mention witches of any culture. The only one that actually does mention witches at all is either the Anglo-Saxons and the Germanic, books on Anglo-Saxons and the Germanic peoples, and one on the Slavs. And the only one that really fits the Wicca definition are the ones amongst the Anglo-Saxons. Whereas Slavs, witches were not a good thing. Being a witch was a bad thing because you were a malevolent spellcaster. That's what a witch was in Slavic culture. And they do mention some in Roman culture, but again, you get the same thing you get with Slavic culture. And then, of course, people will mention the Benedante, who, I think that's how you pronounce it, Benedante or Benedante. And they didn't call themselves witches. That was actually a term used by outsiders. And that seems to be the case with most folk healers and the like during the Middle Ages. I mean, this was not a word they would have used to describe themselves. In fact, many of them were actually Christian as opposed to pagan. Many of them did Christian rituals, many of them prayed to saints, and you can say, well, Gary, those saints were obviously pagan gods in disguise. Well, maybe, but I mean, we don't really have much evidence for that, do we? Yeah, I don't really know what else to say here. I kind of do these off the cuff. I kind of just improvise, yeah. I mean, I don't really write things down. I kind of just say what I feel, and that's why I make these videos. But, there's really no evidence for any sort of witchcraft cult. There's nothing. And I've kind of went off track here because I went from talking about Fluff Bunnies to people who think, that Wicca or some variation of it is historical, and it's not. I mean, it really isn't. Yeah, that's really about it. Gary signing off.